It's hockey season, baby. And that's why the Wednesday episode of your daily source for fantasy hockey news, the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, we're diving deep into the banger league beauties that you need in these upcoming drafts. Can't wait to talk about it. Let's get this paper.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back inside the lab, fantasy fanatics. It's the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, Hump Day edition. Shout out to the everydayers. Salute. Thank you so much and much love for holding us down and making us your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Steele, if I hadn't put already so much money into FanDuel already, I'd be jumping all over that $5 200 cash bonus. However, we'll be talking about bets every single night, Monday through Friday, until the cup is lifted. I can't wait to get into bets. The season right around the corner, but Steele and I got to get into one of our favorite episodes that we do every single year. Steele, we're cat guys. We're multi-cat leagues. We love the fantasy angles of players, especially you this offseason, I would say. Players that really hammer those peripherals, cover the categories, PIMs, blocks, hits, and also serving up a little bit of intrigue in those other categories. So today's episode, Banger League Beauties. No more top fives for right now. We're just going to have a general conversation about players, all of them worthy in different angles and at different times of your draft. Over to you, my friend. Who you looking at? I'm excited to hear some of these takes you have. Banger League Beauties. I know this is one of your favorite shows.
I love talking about Banger League Beauties because that's mostly the leagues that I'm in. You bring in the hits, you bring in the penalty minutes, you bring in the blocks. They add up, and you know me, I love those peripheral categories. So I love talking about the Banger League Beauties, and we're going to try to look at some of the under the radar Banger League guys in the National Hockey League. I think when we look at the top of the list, we know the obvious names out there. The Tkachuk brothers are some of the top two guys who are a Banger League Beauties. JT Miller, my boy, Banger League Beauty, yes, who gets the offensive side and the hits as well as those peripheral categories. A few other names who I'll maybe leave to you that you want to discuss as well. But those are the names that really jump off the page that we've talked about in the past. There's a few other guys who are definitely on this list. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see the guys that we have on the board here: Tom Wilson, Mackenzie Weager, Jake McCabe. And I want to start by talking about Eeli Tolvanen of the Seattle Kraken, because I think this guy has so much potential and a lot of upside playing with the Seattle Kraken and having a lot of opportunity this upcoming season. He's going to be 25 years old, or he is 25 years old already, going into his seventh season in the National Hockey League, technically his sixth full season in the National Hockey League. But he had a career year last year, 41 points in 81 games, 153 shots, 210 hits, and 75 blocks is what I'm looking at from Tolvanen right now. I think he has the potential to be in that top six group for the Seattle Kraken and be really one of those guys who can be a difference maker. I know they still have a pretty young team. You know, you get the likes of Shane Wright in there, Ty Cartier, Matty Beniers centering that top line. So still a lot of upside with these young guns and what they can prove and show us what their potential is. But Tolvanen, who's been there for a couple of seasons now, who seems to be in the thick of it at all times, again, throwing his weight around, going into the dirty areas of the ice. And I do think he has a lot more to give on the offensive side of things. I could see 50 to 55 points this upcoming year from Tolvanen. And if he can get a consistent basis in that top six forward group, playing with the likes of who I just mentioned, Jared McCann, Matty Beniers, Oliver Bjorkstrand, and so much and so forth. But Tolvanen and one of those guys under the radar in Banger Leagues is what I'm looking at right now.
I hope that you continue to have patience with me, because our whole preamble off air was, Flip, you're going to talk about how these are the overlooked under the radar Banger League beauties, and totally missed the ship on that completely. So my co-host,
I got you, brother.
Thanks for holding me down, because yes, there are obvious stud Banger League beauties that you brought up. There's some other ones that I'd throw in there. Vinny Trocheck, you know how I feel about him. Joel Eriksson, Ekmo Seider, Rasmus Dahlin. Those are the elite level Banger League beauties, the guys that can also do it in the point category in the 60-plus realm. And we're looking at some of those overlooked, under the radar Banger League beauties. So if you are in cat leagues, you are in Banger leagues that count these peripheral stats that we're talking about, these are some of those guys that you can fill out your draft with. Steele will talk about some real deep cuts later in the episode. I like where you've gone off the start of this episode. I'd also like to chime in here with Tom Wilson. And actually, let me just get this off the chest. The Seattle Kraken, Steele, headed into next season, Eeli Tolvanen is going to get a good shot there, and he is a David Poile draft pick from the Nashville Predators a number of seasons ago. You know how I feel about David Poile. So there you go. Tom Wilson, Washington Capitals, a lot of moves in the offseason from that front office. We've talked all about it. We're excited to see what it means for the success of this team. I'm excited to see what it means for a guy in Tom Wilson, Steele, who a couple of years ago, before the serious injuries, he only played 33 games 2 years ago. He is at the top of the Banger League beauty list. He's not on the under the radar overlooked, but I think he might be overlooked this season. And last year, 35 points, 228 hits, almost 170 shots, and 133 penalty minutes. This man is still relevant, Steele, even though his knee might be totally shredded and he has been banged up. I like him a lot headed into this draft as a guy who people are overlooking big time. And with the improvements with this Washington club, I'm really excited to see if maybe he can return to a 30, 35, 40-point realm, which is clearly what he was able to do before he got hurt, and everything else he brings. Tom Wilson, Banger League beauty, being overlooked, really liking him, and I think you are too.
Look, career high 52 points just 3 seasons ago from Tom Wilson. He definitely has to be in the conversation for Banger League beauty. Obviously, the Washington Capitals took a step back last year with the overall offensive production, just all around, not just one single person. Everybody struggled at times throughout the season. They were a bottom 5 team in goals for. They still somehow made the playoffs. But I do see a turning point this next year. Obviously, again, they lose TJ Oshie, but I've said this. I like the moves that the Capitals have made this offseason, acquiring Logan Thompson, bringing in Jacob Chychrun, bringing in Andrew Mangiapane, bringing in Pierre-Luc Dubois. These are guys that can really help and help the depth as well as fill out those areas of the ice that can really help Alexander Ovechkin and Tom Wilson in the offensive zone. So I think this is going to be a good season. It's going to be a step in the right direction, at least in the offensive side of offensive production side of things. Compared to last year. There's no way they can get worse with what we've seen. And I know you like Connor McMichael. There's Sonny Milano in the mix as well. So there's a lot of upside with this team. And I do like all the additions they made this offseason. So Tom Wilson definitely has to be in the conversation for Banger League beauties. We'll come back after the break and mention some more under the radar guys that we're looking at right now. Again, if you're watching on YouTube, you're looking at it right here. Mackenzie Weager, Jake McCabe, and a few other guys we left off the list just for a little bit of a tease for you guys.
I'm intrigued to hear about this Jake McCabe cut. I don't know if you're going to take some heat for it, but I think those are some of those guys that you were going to talk about on the deeper side of things, and I like it. The Washington Capitals only outscored the Kraken, Ducks, Sharks, and Blackhawks last year. So to say that bringing in some offensively minded players like Mangiapane, I don't even know what to say about Dubois, but yeah, he's something. He should do something. Chychrun, we like them. I like Logan Thompson in the cage the most. I think the strength of that team will be from the back end out, but we know what that does for forward, Steele. You and I have played hockey. When you can trust the boys on the back end, you're feeling a little bit more confident with that puck on your stick going through the neutral zone. We'll talk a little bit more about our favorite under-the-radar, overlooked Banger League beauties right after the break-in. Don't miss the rest of the week where we'll be talking about all of the fantasy draft prep and NHL news that you need. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. NFL fans, you can kick off the NFL season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you make your bets. Right now, get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 wager, and that's on FanDuel.com.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Continue to hit the subscribe button, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. We appreciate all that love and support you show us Monday through Friday. 7 o'clock in the morning is when you can find our episodes. So once again, thank you so much for all that love and support you've shown us throughout the summer, throughout the fall, leading up to all of our fantasy hockey drafts this upcoming week. Flip, Banger League Beauties. You can't talk about Banger League Beauties without this guy on the list, in my opinion. Sam Bennett has to be in the Banger League Beauty conversation. And this guy has a little bit of wear and tear over his NHL career. I mean, over the last 2 seasons at least, he's only, he's missed a handful of games. 69 games played last year, 63 games the year before that. Obviously, the wear and tear throughout the playoffs has caught up with him. But even so, then he is in that conversation for Banger League Beauty. I mean, this guy is on the edge of always crossing the line, but somehow making it clean for the most part of his career. So, we've seen at times that he can lay the boom and he can knock some guys out. I go back to that Carolina Hurricanes hit. I believe it was my boy Brady Shea, or maybe it was Brett Pesci behind the net back in the playoffs a couple of seasons ago. But Sam Bennett, he can lay the boom out there. 173 hits, 43 blocks, 171 shots, and 100 penalty minutes last year with the Florida Panthers. I mean, this guy's not afraid to drop the gloves. He's going to get in the thick of it as well. He'll always be able to knock a guy out with that super punch that he's got going out over there. So for me, Sam Bennett, he's one of those guys right there along with Matthew Tkachuk. You hate to play against him. You love to play with him. And he's always bringing the boom every time he's on the ice. He's looking for that big hit out there. So he's looking for the big hit to get the boys going. Sam Bennett has to be in the conversation.
I appreciate you bringing up a good new market boy and Sam Bennett. I also, though, will hit you with this take, Steele, and it's not taking away anything from Sam Bennett, who even myself overlooked him. So there you go. Boom. Perfect. On the overlooked, under the radar Banger League Beauties. That's why we do this together, pal. I look at this lineup for the Florida Panthers, however, and hit me with your take on this. And again, this is absolutely detracting nothing from what Sam Bennett brings, and all of the stats that you brought up hold true. And I actually still think, even if he does kind of slide into the third line center position or wherever they put him, I still think he has value. I'm looking at Anton Lundell coming off of a long-term extension, a player that Barry Zito, he doesn't play pitcher for the Oakland A's. Hello. Anton Lundell is a player that Bill Zito loves a lot. And I'm looking at this roster, Steele, and maybe I'm reading into the tea leaves a little bit too much. I love Anton Lundell, and I see him as their second-line center of the future. So I'm kind of looking at this situation as, yes, I do love Sam Bennett and Banger League Beauty, 100%, all of that. Sidebar to the Florida Panthers, though, I could see Sam Bennett kind of sliding into that third-line role and then letting Anton Lundell have a look. However, this Panthers team, regardless, is run by Paul Maurice. They are going to be back there as one of the hardest to play against, probably led by number 9, Sam Bennett, who you so eloquently put is just a bee in the bonnet of the opposition. Now, I know I've been talking a lot. Let me just very quickly say this. Keandre Miller, over to you, because this is a guy I've been waiting on, Steele. And I think this is the year. I said it last year, so I'll just say it again because I was wrong last year. 148 hits. 117 block shots last year, regressed in the points. Only 30, but he still had almost 50 penalty minutes. He can jump up in the rush, and he plays on the New York Rangers. So he is one of my favorite overlooked Banger League Beauties that I really do think, regardless of the format, makes an excellent last D-man, your back first backup D-man. You know how I feel about this player, and I love him on the overlooked Banger League Beauty side of things. And mute's got you again, pal.
Mute button always
He's
getting
back
at least once a week. But, we talked about Keandre Miller a lot last season. I think we were very it didn't pan out. We were very unimpressed with what he put up overall for the New York Rangers. But we still have a lot of faith in this guy fantasy-wise on what he can do and what he brings to the table for this team. Regardless, so we are a blue and white podcast unofficially over
Blue
here. Blue Shirt Podcast, blue and white, when we get the Toronto Maple Leafs in the mix as well. So we love the Maple Leafs. We love the Rangers, apparently. So it's a Blue Shirt Podcast on this Locked On Fantasy Hockey show. But yeah, Keandre Miller has a lot of potential, a lot of upside to what he can bring fantasy-wise, but we're still waiting for him to take that next step in his career. Hopefully it's this season. I like you bringing up Keandre Miller. I got to mention, we're talking about the Blue Shirt podcast over here. I'll go straight into it. This is a deeper cut league right now, 16-team leagues maybe, looking for those guys who fill out the peripheral categories. Jake McCabe is who I'm looking at on the blue line. A career high 28 points last year. He did miss 9 games. He only played 73 games, but again, a career high 28 points, 56 penalty minutes. And it's really, again, those, when we talk about Banger League's beauty, it's the penalty minutes, it's the blocks, it's the hits. Not all guys are going to bring the offensive production. They're going to miss a few categories out there, here and there. Jake McCabe, 219 hits, 129 blocks, and 56 penalty minutes. He puts his body on the line. He's going to step in front of that puck every single time if he can choose to do so. I mean, obviously, he's going to want to help his goaltender out. He's going to box out in front of him. He's going to go into the corners and lay the boom out on the opposition. And again, when you play for the Toronto Maple Leafs, there's a lot of upside. There's a lot of upside that comes to the table as well when you play with the caliber of players that he gets to play with. Again, there's a lot of potential for him to do a lot more in the offensive zone of things. He can step up and chip away sometimes with goals and assists. So I like that part of his game as well. But again, it's really the blocks, the hits, and the penalty minutes that I'm looking at McCabe at right now.
Yeah, this is a very deep cut. His game isn't offensive minded.
Yeah.
I don't hate the take. I'm not going to get at you. He wouldn't be a guy I would look at. However, with the right league, with the right lens, headed into a season where I know he's looking for a long-term deal as well, these are some of the angles that you're going to have to read into. And say what you will about the Toronto Maple Leafs, they're going to be a harder team to play against this year. Craig Berube is hard-nosed. They bring in Chris Tanev. Everyone knows about Oliver Ekman-Larsson's season last year. Look, we'll talk about the Leafs. We're going to talk about breaking down every single division. We'll rank them. We'll talk about our expectations. I appreciate you bringing up McCabe. He wouldn't make the list for me. He does, though, remind me of a player in terms of filling out those deep peripherals in triple-digit categories. And this guy takes it to a whole level of Mackenzie Weager. And I know dedicated fantasy circles, they're all over Weager. Steele, you've talked about him at length. And coming off of 52 points, a 20-goal season for a guy who, speaking of not offensive-minded, he really isn't. He is still got to be in the conversation of Banger League beauties. And I think this is where I might be bending it a bit, Steele, because I don't think he's necessarily overlooked. However, I think what I appreciate about our show the most is we're for everybody. Not everybody's a fantasy hockey expert. There's some newbies to the game who might not watch a lot of Calgary Flames hockey and might not have heard a ton about Mackenzie Weager. So here I am telling you, the man had 200 block shots last year, 194 hits, 51 penalty minutes. If your league is counting these categories, Mackenzie Weager makes a very, very nice second or third defenseman on your team. In deeper leagues, I might be okay with him being my first defenseman off the board, Steele. But I'll turn it over to you, my friend. Talk about it now after the break, whatever you're feeling.
Look, Mackenzie Weager, I've talked about him. He was in that list that he was in the top 10 defensemen going into the 2024-25 fantasy hockey season. For me, I believe he came 7th on the list. And for that specific reason right there, he brings the Banger League beauty out every single season. Over 200 hits, over 200 blocks, over 200 shots. He has 40-plus point potential going into the season as well. Obviously, there's going to be a dip in the shooting percentage, in the goal category. But when you look at the overall team for the Calgary Flames, there's still got a lot of upside. We don't have Jonathan Huberdeau as high as we had him in the past, but he's still a playmaker who can pass the puck and facilitate for his line mates. Igor Sharangovich has that goal-scoring ability as well. Nazem Kadri is still a guy who brings the boom every single game. So there's still a lot of guys, and there's a lot of prospects getting into the mix as well. Matt Coronado, Connor Zary from the Calgary Flames, who look pretty good in the preseason right now. So Pospisil, I know you like him last year, or we talked about him last year as well. So a lot going on with the Calgary Flames team. Obviously, we still don't think they're going to be a good team, but they can bring. They've got some good guys out there for fantasy value. Mackenzie Weager probably at the top of the list with Nazem Kadri. We got a few more guys we want to talk about, but we'll talk about them when we come back from the break. This episode is also brought to you by Indeed. We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for candidates isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/locked-on. Just go to Indeed.com/locked-on right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed from this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Once again, thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Continue to smash that subscribe button, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. Flip and I appreciate all that love and support you show us Monday through Friday. And continuing, we're going to show you back some love with the Banger League Beauty episode, continuing some of the guys we want to talk about. I just want to mention these guys as well. Again, deeper cuts before I get to my final guy. Just guys that I have on this list right now. I want to talk about Brendan Dillon, Garnett Hathaway, guys who get blocks, hits, and penalty minutes. Jeremy Lauzon. Again, there's not a lot of offensive upside to these guys I'm mentioning, but if you need some help with the waiver wire Mondays, you're looking for someone to fill out those categories, these guys you can go to. Brendan Dillon, Garnett Hathaway, Jeremy Lauzon, Dakota Joshua. Again, Dakota Joshua, I really like a lot. Obviously, he's going to miss the beginning of the season. He was diagnosed with
Rick
testicular
Tocchet
cancer.
said he'll be back soon, Steele. Not to cut you off. Sorry, pal. He said he's going to be back soon.
Okay, well, that's good. Well, I do believe he's going to miss the start of the season, but hopefully he's back sooner than later. But he was diagnosed with testicular cancer, so obviously prayers and our thoughts and prayers are with him and his family. Obviously, it's very serious. Again, for any men out there, make sure you're going and get yourself checked out by the doctors. I mean, that's huge right there. So thoughts and prayers with Joshua. Like, hopefully he's going to be all right. He should be all right. But I want to mention him because I do like this player a lot. He is definitely in that Banger League Beauty-esque of this list. Evander Kane as well. I know he's not going to be back until it looks like January or February, but another guy who can bring the boom, who fills out the peripheral categories, has offensive upside to his game. He's not going to be back until 2025, it looks like, as he had surgery. He had surgery recently, so it looks like he's going to miss the first 4 months. Before I give it back over to you, Flip, the guy I really want to talk about. And you can't talk about Banger League Beauties without this guy on the list. And again, maybe some deeper formats here, but he fills out the peripherals. Ratko Gudas, the 9th captain of the Anaheim Ducks. The guy is fearless. He's one of the toughest characters in the National Hockey League. 18 points, not a lot of upside to his offensive game, but 128 penalty minutes, 154 blocks, and 232 hits. He actually had over 300 plus hits the previous 2 seasons. So I think he'll even get back up to close to 300, maybe potentially more than 300 hits, but he puts his body on the line for his teammates. He's standing up for those young guys. I think he's a great captain for this Ducks team. When you have Troy Terry, when you have Trevor Zegras, Zellweger on the blue line, a lot of young guys. McTavish is the name I was looking for. I like Ratko Gudas on this list. Obviously, some deeper format here when it comes into the format you're playing for your fantasy league, but he's going to fill out those peripherals. He was rostered, I believe, at 40% on Yahoo.
Interesting.
So he was quite up there, and he was on a lot of teams, and he helped them out in the peripheral categories.
That's one of those guys that is like the prototypical week to week waiver wire. You're getting pumped in a certain category, hits, pims, that kind of thing. You pick up Radko, he snaps. He's got that kind of attitude. He's got 38 penalty minutes and you win the week. I'm not saying that's something that's easy to predict, but that's the kind of thing you get with old Kooky Radko. You know, I like to say Kooky Mike Smith. I miss Kooky Mike Smith a little bit in the NHL Steel. 2 names I'll throw out quickly to wrap this bad boy up. Look, we always try and get you guys in and out in 30 minutes with all of the fantasy news, hockey news, and soon to be betting breakdowns that you need every single day, Monday through Friday, 30 minutes. That's what it is. Number 1, Nikita Zadorov playing with Charlie McAvoy. I'm intrigued. This is also a guy with a mean streak, and the points won't be there. If he even brings you 20 points, which he's done a few different times in his career, including last year, 177 hits, 68 block shots, 125 penalty minute steal. And now he's playing on a really good Boston Bruins team. And I understand I'm not taking anything away from the Vancouver Canucks or previous squads that he's played for. But playing with McAvoy is something that I have my eye on. So, number 1, Zadorov. Number 2, Michael Bunting. And let me explain. Because Michael Bunting fits the bill wholeheartedly as overlooked and under the radar. And after going to Pittsburgh last year, Steele, 21 games, how about 19 points for Michael Bunting playing on the wing with someone named Evgeny Malkin? He will once again slot in on the left side with Evgeny Malkin getting a good look there with Gino, one of the best of the last 2 decades. Even fading, I need to pay attention to who's playing with Evgeny Malkin. And he's going to get power play 2 time at the very least. So he also, in the old Michael Bunting days, triple digits in penalty minutes, almost triple digits in hits. If he can return to that comfort level and be the pest that he is, I think he can be one of those, like he's your last ad in the draft in almost any format because he does have offensive upside. I just tipped my hand a little bit, Steele. But if you look into the numbers and you wouldn't think, ooh, Michael Bunting, 19 points in 21 games, I don't need to do the numbers on that one. That's a player that I will have my eye on, under the radar, overlooked Banger League beauty.
I don't know if he fits the bill exactly as a Banger League beauty. He's definitely a draftable player towards the end of your draft. I don't know if I would consider him a Banger League beauty. Again, just 49 hits last year, 21 blocks.
85 in back-to-back years before. I'm just saying. I'm just saying
only one time over 100 penalty minutes as well. I don't know if he would be considered
80 penalty minutes, 57 penalty minutes. Anyway, I get you.
Low in the hit category, low in the block category. I'm not sure if he fits the bill there, but he has the offensive potential. And maybe he does get back up there to close to 100 hits and over 100 penalty minutes. I don't think Crosby would like that very much if he's getting over 100 penalty minutes playing in that top 6 group. But those are the Banger League beauties, under the radar guys, overlooked. In deeper formats is where you can find some of these names that we've mentioned. Again, this will help your fantasy team very, very much over the course of the year. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod your first listen every single day. For your second listen, make sure you go check out the Locked On NHL podcast, where the season never ends, providing national expertise with a local perspective. You can find the link in the description below so you don't have to search for it. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. From both Flip and I, we wish you good luck with your fantasy drafts this week. We wish you good luck with all your bets this fall, and we shall see you back here again tomorrow.
Peace.